Pop Culture Pastor.
So, Cody, how familiar are you with Glenn Powell?
Glenn Powell.
Yeah, Powell, not Pal. Okay. That would be a cool name, though, if his name was Glenn Powell. What up, pal? How's my pal?
Is that the guy from Top Gun Maverick?
It is the guy from Top Gun Maverick. He had like kind of the Iceman-ish role.
Then, like Iceman, he was my favorite character of the whole movie. So.
I knew he would be. Are you aware that he is involved in the sequel to Twisters? Did you know he was going to be in that movie? Did you know they were making this movie?
Well, I knew there was rumblings of a sequel. I didn't realize we were just going to add an S to it.
Oh, no. It's in fact, they just got done, with what do they call it? Primary filming.
Oh, okay.
They might have to go back and do reshoots. Who knows? It'll be hard to get the Twister back. He's going for a lot of money these days, and calling him back for reshoots is a lot. But maybe they can get Sharknado to fill in.
Sharknado would be great.
Anyways, I'm not super into like whatever this movie they're filming. I'm aware of Glenn Powell. I don't dislike him. I thought he was good in Top Gun Maverick. And so I'm like, okay. But then I just happened to see this interview he did for Variety. Mm-hmm. Actually, this article's in Variety. He did it for Vogue. He did an interview with Vogue.
Who of us has not done an In Vogue sesh?
I haven't. Have you? I mean, you are a handsome man. I could see them wanting you to do Vogue, especially when we hit it big.
I'm not saying that it's dropped yet, but
you'd be on the cover of Vogue with your favorite pop culture pastor, America, and it'd be a big picture of you, and I'd be somewhere like at home crying myself to sleep. No, okay, so I'm like all over the place. I should go ahead and tell you that this is Pop Culture Pastor.
The podcast.
Yeah. And that my name's Dave and Cody's here.
Yes.
And we're glad to be here. We've got some guests coming later on in the show, so stick around.
Indeed.
So Glenn told Vogue about the Twisters movie that it's definitely not a reboot. Okay? So it's not a reboot. It's been referred to as a Twister sequel, reboot, and remake in various press stories since it was first announced. He says, quote, "We're not trying to recreate the story from the first one. It's a completely original story. There are no characters from the original movie back, so it's not really a continuation. It's just its own standalone story in the modern day." So wait a minute. It's not a reboot. It's not a sequel. It's just another story. Why are you calling it Twisters?
Because it's in the same vein as Twister 1.
He eventually says it's just in the Twister cinematic universe.
It makes sense. Having seen Storm Chasers, there was multiple teams that would chase storms. And so, like, Twister 1 is this team. Now we're following a new team that's chasing Twisters.
Do we need it? Does it need to be in the Twister cinematic universe? I mean, honestly.
I'm really hoping that Reed Timmer is in this from Storm Chasers.
If you're Reed Timmer, though, doesn't being in this movie sort of like... Because he cannot be a fan of the first Twister, right?
I think he is.
Is he really? That movie literally ends with them like holding onto a pole in the middle of a tornado and not getting killed.
I know people that are archaeologists that love Indiana Jones.
Like Reed Timmer literally goes into tornadoes in a tank because you'd get turned into Swiss cheese.
The Dominator.
Yeah. Do you ever watch Reed Timmer? Side note, do you ever watch his live videos during the summer when he's chasing tornadoes?
Sometimes. I did go see him speak in person.
Oh, wow. That's kind of cool.
He was in a nearby town 30 minutes away.
Yeah. If you don't live in like the Midwest, you're probably like, who's Reed Timmer? He's a celebrity around these parts.
Yes.
You'll be driving down the highway, you see the Dominator, you go the other direction.
Indeed.
Because there's something bad going on wherever he's heading.
You want to head the opposite way.
And it's probably the filming of a Twister cinematic universe movie. I mean, come on, Cody. We're going a little too... Well, not everything needs to be a franchise.
Except that the Twister people probably saw the cashola from the Sharknado people. And speaking of Sharknado, Ein Ziering got attacked.
I saw that. And it was, well, apparently he dished out some punishment.
He did.
As only a cast member of Beverly Hills 90210 could.
Yeah, which I know he got to show off his action chops in Sharknado. And so maybe this will do for Glenn what it did for Ian.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Are they going to bring anyone back? I mean, you can't bring back the best characters. There's no Bill Paxton. Philip Seymour Hoffman's gone. I mean, I guess Helen Hunt, but Helen Hunt doesn't seem super interested in acting anymore. And she was not the most memorable character from that movie anyways. It was clearly Philip Seymour Hoffman.
It was. So, I think you have just some random side character that no one remembers and be like, oh, it's him.
Yeah, you want to go.
He's now leading a team.
You want to dig really deep? Here's a deep cut. You want a shared universe? I'll give you one.
Okay.
How about that Philip Seymour Hoffman's character in Twisters is essentially the same character from Philip Seymour Hoffman's character in the Steve Martin movie Leap of Faith. Those two movies taking place in the same universe. There you go. There's your shared universe.
I thought you were going to say his same character from The Big Lebowski.
No. Wildly different characters.
Where he, like, Big Lebowski takes place first. And he's like, I've had it with these rich people. I'm moving to the Midwest.
Man, I don't know. My man Philip had range, though.
He did.
Acting range. But he's essentially the same guy. Early on in his career, he played like the weird, wacky side character / bus driver / sidekick. And he was both. He was like literally those two guys or tech guy. And he's literally all of those characters in Leap of Faith and Twister.
Nailed it.
So there you go. All right. Okay, we're gonna move on with our show. Like we said, we got a fun show coming up. We're gonna talk about the Zac Efron wrestling movie,
Iron Claw,
and wrestling in general with some friends coming up later on in the show. So stick around for that. But right now, Cody, you know what we need to do?
What?
We need to go head out into the lobby. We haven't been to the lobby in a while.
I haven't had Raisinets forever.
You shouldn't. Nobody should. And funny thing, our movie theater, those Raisinets sit there forever until you're the only one that buys them. So you're getting like 2-year-old Raisinets every time you go to the theater. Because nobody else eats those. I'm just telling you straight up.
I've seen people buy them in front of me.
No, that was a figment of your imagination. You were fantasizing that. All right, let's go out to the lobby. We are going to answer listener questions in the lobby right now.
Welcome to the lobby.
All right. We are in the lobby.
Yes.
Cody's getting his gross Raisinets.
With Mountain Dew.
Chocolate covered. Bleh. And I'm getting nachos, of course. And we're here we're both getting Mountain Dew.
Yes.
What's your favorite Mountain Dew?
Honestly, it depends on the day, but Voltage is up there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I can go with some Code Red or Original and be A-okay.
Yeah. I think my favorite is Livewire. Of what I know, I'm reasonably sure I can find in a store.
Livewire, I drink it in the mornings.
Oh, it's like your orange juice.
Yes. Or if I think I'm feeling sick, I will drink Live
I
Wire.
need the vitamin C.
It's probably not there, but it tricks my mind into thinking it is.
Of the flavors that you don't get in the stores, and I don't know why this one hasn't come back, but I loved Pitch Black.
Pitch Black was okay. It was never my go-to, but occasionally.
I was a fan.
So
That was grape, right? I'm pretty sure that was grape.
yeah,
Is what it was, the flavor.
so Mountain Dew Pitch Black had sponsored a wrestling match last year. And it was Bray Wyatt versus LA Knight. And Jack and I watch pay-per-views together, and he bought me a Pitch Black to drink during it.
They had win. I must have missed that. I haven't seen Pitch Blacks for sale in like years.
They had it.
Oh, man.
I drank it.
Apparently I missed out. All right. We're here to answer listener questions. We might as well just get down to it. Danica Giesemann, Sir Jason's lovely bride, she says, asks, Back to the Future, the musical, good idea or bad idea? Would you pay to see it on Broadway?
So this one's one of those, it kind of depends.
Yeah.
Because if you have a brilliant mind who can make music that goes well with it, nostalgia overload, and it will be great. But if it's just, we're trying to do a cash grab and we have the most basic people making this, then no, don't do it. Spam-A-Lot, which is basically Monty Python and the Holy Grail on Broadway, phenomenal.
Yeah.
But Eric Idle is a musical guy, and there's already music in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, so they just had to add extra music and kind of change the story up a little bit so it fits the format of Broadway.
Yeah. It's interesting because you're right. Like there's so many of them that are based on existing things. But then there's so many they've tried that haven't worked. Remember the Spider-Man musical?
Ew.
With the U2 songs? Like they were all written by U2. The music was actually really good because I remember listening to it, but the show like had all sorts of problems and didn't like someone
People
die.
getting hurt left and right.
They got hurt.
I don't recall if they died or not, but I feel it was close.
Yeah, because they're like at one point Spider-Man would like swing over the crowd and then they dropped him or something. I don't know. I'm probably remembering that all wrong, but in my head he died. Peter Parker dropped and died on the crowd. Mentally scarring everyone in attendance. But the music was good.
Yes. And that's all that really matters.
So, like, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think it could be good. I'm already imagining, like, the set list, the songs. Because, like, there should be songs called, entitled The Libyans, 1.21 gigawatts. What did you just call me?
So I also think that you can insert random 80s songs into the playlist.
Oh, lots of Huey Lewis in the News.
Yes. And so I think that you can have original music and existing music.
I just had an amazing idea. What if Huey Lewis played Doc Brown?
Boom. Just blew your mind.
Did I just get a job with a Broadway musical? I don't know what they do. I don't know who does the casting, but I feel like that's a slam dunk.
Nailed it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm for it. I'm for Back to the Future, the musical. I hope it's good.
Yes.
Would you pay to see it on Broadway? Well, of course, if it was good. I'd pay to see just about anything on Broadway because I assume if you're on Broadway, it's good.
It's top tier.
Yeah. And if you've never seen a musical like with that kind of talent, I'll never forget on my first anniversary with my wife, I took her to Chicago and Wicked was traveling at that time. And it wasn't like the first cast, it was like the second cast. So I didn't get to see
Kristen Chenoweth.
No, yeah, there was no Chenoweth, there was no what's her name? That was
Idina Menzel.
Yeah, Idina Enzyme or whatever John Travolta calls her. No, Idina Menzel. Yeah, so but they were still like I had never seen a musical, Broadway level musical before. And I remember at one point, like the whole attitude I had going to the musical was, I'm doing this to make my wife happy. She's going to love this. I'm not going to get anything out of it, but I'll be happy that she's happy. And then like at the end of the finale, I'm like the first one who stands up like, yeah, like they're super talented. They're amazing.
So I did see Wicked on Broadway.
You saw it on Broadway
and Spam-A-Lot.
Okay. And it was impressive, huh?
It was mind-blowing. And I was a high school punk that didn't like musicals, and yet it was good.
Yeah. Wicked, I mean, that finale in Wicked is pretty impressive. Sir Jason adds the follow-up question here.
Okay.
What movie that has never been a musical would you like to see them turn into a musical for Broadway?
Halloween.
So there's two ways to go about this, right? You can take a movie that already music's a big part of while not being a full-blown musical, and turn it into a musical, or you can go like a movie that's not a musical at all.
Like Halloween.
I mean, it seems like it would be fun to do a scary one. Mm-hmm. Well, Halloween, Scream would be a good option.
/ Because
you could throw in a lot of 90s music.
I feel with Halloween, like you can have the people singing about like, oh, I'm home alone without my parents, living my dream.
I'm a high school kid making out in the woods. What could possibly go wrong? You know, like that kind of thing.
What was that sound?
Let's go check it out.
Why is the electricity out?
Here, let's hide in this shed full of axes. That's always a good idea, too.
And then for the finale, when like, especially if you're going off, like if you don't do a franchise of Halloween musicals,
no,
which you could, but if you don't, then you have Michael actually sing at the end. And then you learn, oh, he just needed some help getting to his old house.
He's like, the song's like, why is everyone afraid of me? I'm just trying to make friends.
Yes.
I'd be a great Broadway musical writer, just so everyone knows.
Well, so long, pop culture pastor. Hello, Broadway.
Kyle Kessinger. He asks us one last Christmas question to wrap up the 2023 holiday season. What are the top 3 songs on your Christmas playlist? Mine are Jingle Bell Rock by Bobby Helm, Merry Christmas from the Family by Montgomery Gentry, and Christmas Island by Jimmy Buffett.
Love it.
Yeah. Go ahead, Cody.
Okay.
Do you have favorites?
So my top 3 from this Christmas cycle would be, 2 of them are kind of out there. One of them's more traditional. 1914 Christmas Truce by Elias Dummer. That's a Christian artist, but it talks about a very historical event, and that's Neato Burrito to me. And then for King and Country featuring Need to Breathe, O Come, Emmanuel.
Okay, that might be the best version of O Come, Emmanuel. I wasn't going to go with that one, but you're right. That version of O Come, Emmanuel might be the best one I've ever heard.
And then to keep it secular, Brenda Lee's Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree, because I did watch Home Alone quite a bit this go round.
I'm going to go, I think, with... I'll do my secular one first, and that is Bing Crosby, Forever and Ever. I grew up listening to Bing Crosby Christmas tunes.
Nat King Cole fell right outside the top 3 this year.
Yeah, someone you probably have that traditional Christmas music that you got from your parents or grandparents on your list of favorites somewhere. For me, if I have to pick my favorite one, it's probably the David Bowie one. The one he did with David Bowie, Little Drummer Boy, Peace on Earth, where they sing 2 different songs and mash it together, and it's freaking sublime. It's just great. I would also go with a For King and Country song, which they're Christian artists, contemporary Christian artists. If you haven't heard of them, if you have, it's probably through their Christmas music, because their Christmas music reaches out farther than the genre.
It slaps.
And Little Drummer Boy is their version of Little Drummer Boy is the ultimate version of Little Drummer Boy. And I just realized that I have that song as twice. in my thing. But they're two like wildly different versions.
Very different. That movie brings like anger to me.
It brings anger?
Yes.
Like why?
So every year, like we would watch Rudolph, we would watch Frosty, and then we'd watch Little Drummer Boy, and my mom would like, because that's her favorite, and I'm like, this isn't believable. No, Mary and Joseph aren't happy with the kid banging on his drum, waking up the baby Jesus.
And finally, my last one, and maybe my most favorite, Brian Setzer Orchestra. Brian Setzer of Stray Cats fame. The Nutcracker Suite by the Brian Setzer Orchestra. It's like 7 minutes long, and it's fantastic. And it's like him. It's like that rockabilly, brass instrument with the electric guitar, and it's wonderful. It captures all the movements of the Nutcracker at some point in it, and it is maybe my favorite Christmas song by an orchestra. Sorry, Trans-Siberian.
They're offended.
I always like that too, because like the Brian Setzer Orchestra, I mean, I think they're more of a band. It just sounds fancy.
The old 97s nearly made the list.
Okay.
But I don't know what Christmas is.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I forgot about that. That one's definitely has risen up the playlist with the Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special. But you're right. That one's fantastic.
It slaps.
Absolutely. Now I'm a little sad because I forgot about it and I didn't listen to it enough this season.
Well, the 12 Days of Christmas goes till January 6th. So you got a couple days left.
Okay. We need to watch the Guardians Christmas special too, because I think I only watched it one time. And we gotta go back and watch it several times. All right. That's all the questions we got time for.
Yes.
We're going to go back into the studio and get to the main point of this pod. We're going to meet our friends in there. Got a couple of guests to talk wrestling and the Zac Efron wrestling biopic about the Von Erich family.
Yes.
So we're digging deep, and this movie is good. It's
Very
a
good.
really good movie. So just don't tune out, even if you're not a wrestling person, because there's lots of stuff to dig into here.
Layers.
Yeah. We'll see you in a minute.
You are listening to Pop Culture Pastor.
So Cody, we are here to talk about the movie Iron Claw.
Loosely based on a real life story, but not mine.
It's loosely based. Are you already saying they took liberties with it? Or were you just saying that to sound fancy?
There's definitely parts they left out and some things that I think they changed, but
Okay.
We'll get into that later.
It never fails, by the way, that when we start recording, some emergency vehicle goes by. I bet people think we live in some urban area, some urban center.
That there's always emergencies happening left and right.
There's not. Well, I don't know. We have a lot of fires here. Seems like. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. We're here to talk about Iron Claw. I am looking forward to hearing some of the actual facts. If you guys know the real story, the actual story stuff they left out, because I'm going into this with very little knowledge of the Von Erichs, other than we'll get to that. That's the first thing we should hit. We should really introduce
Or the guests that are on.
Yeah, I was about to say that. I was about to
Okay.
introduce the guests, but in case you just popped in, this is Pop Culture Pastor. I'm Dave. Cody's here.
Yep.
You gonna say
Yeah.
something?
No,
Or you just,
that's me.
Are you just gonna continue to be sarcastic?
There's no sarcasm.
Okay, all right. Yeah. So we saw the Iron Claw. It's a movie about wrestling, and I figure our first guest, let's say Jackson's here.
Jupe jupe.
Jackson is back. Geek Jackson, already a member of the Geek of the Round Table. He's been on many episodes, and since this is about wrestling, this is Jackson's wheelhouse again.
I'm the one you call.
So he is here, and we've also got another guest for the first time ever on the pod, Kiefer Storrer, college debate coach and author of 10 Months of Courage, which you can find on Amazon, coincidentally.
Long time listener, first time caller.
Yes! I've always wanted to have someone say that to me because you're
Got
the
your
first.
back.
Yeah. I'm not so sure I've ever had anyone that listened said they wanted to be on the pod yet. So this is a first.
I've been begging Cody for it for the past couple years, honestly.
Well, you didn't have to beg because we're not that special. We've literally I know it feels crazy that there are tens and tens of listeners listening to your voice right now. But yeah. So Kiefer Storrer is here. I take it you have some background in loving pro wrestling.
Oh yeah, that was one of the main friendship connectors that Jackson and I had was a mutual love of wrestling.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what brought me into this little friendship triumvirate.
That's
Now, Cody, on the other hand.
that's a great word.
Thank you.
Are we bashing Cody's wrestling fandom?
Apparently.
There is no bashing of my wrestling. It is literally mid 90s to early aughts, and then I disappear until about 2015. And now I'm back. Slowly.
Cody learns about new wrestlers every week with Jackson and I, and he's a constant scholar learning about wrestling, and so it's very cool.
Very good. Very good. Cody, I identify with Cody's wrestling fandom because that's the first time I've ever heard you say that. But I find that my wrestling fandom is really like I'm really into it for a couple years or a few years, and then I don't know anything about it. And then I'm really into it for a couple years, and then there's a swath of not knowing. And this movie actually hits a spot for young Dave, but I'll get to that. I want to hear Kiefer's love of pro wrestling, his wrestling fandom background.
Yeah, so my dad was super into wrestling growing up. I remember him showing me WrestleMania 5 with Hogan and Warrior. That was 5, Jack, or is that 6?
Let's go with
5
it.
or 6, whatever. I got super into it when John Cena was just becoming the United States champ. And then I watched it for a couple years there, stopped for a while, got back into it with the rise of Daniel Bryan, a.k.a. Bryan Danielson, within the WWE, so like 2014, and I've been watching it kind of ever since. Big WWE guy, but I also like A&W occasionally. So.
A&W?
AEW.
Oh, I thought we were talking about the burger joint.
Yeah, I was going to say,
I
that's
also
a random
occasionally
fact to put in there, but okay.
I also occasionally enjoy A&W.
Right, wrestling and fast food, yeah. AEW, yeah.
Yeah, okay, this is awesome because I feel like when we need when we talk about wrestling, we need the professional fan on here and not named Jackson. So
We
I'm old
actually
hat.
have a wrestling faction here.
a faction.
Yeah, it started with Cody and I, but then we looped Jack into it. But we're known as the Family Jewels.
Oh.
And that's our trios faction.
Okay.
And so yeah, we're legit.
Do you have
Yeah.
a
Third
catchphrase
man like
and
Hulk
or,
Hogan.
do you have a catchphrase and or signature move?
We do like the diamond cutter.
Okay.
And then someone might point like a gun like with their fingers, like the Bullet Club guns, like through the diamond is how I envision it. We've never
I was
actually
going to
done
say,
the,
I'm
we haven't
just
done
finding
the pose.
out about this right now.
we haven't done the pose, but I think it sounds really cool.
You're still working on it.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
still
yeah.
working on it. And code names, not like real names, but like, your wrestling names.
Oh, my wrestling name would be the Zephyr Falcon because my grandpa's name is Zephyrinus Falcon, and so I like that Zephyr Falcon.
Is he part of a secret organization?
I'd be like a high flyer. He's Mexican, and so that Zephyrinus. But Falcon is you're right. Yeah,
I know
it's
a lot of
incredible-
Mexican people. I've never
Yeah.
heard anyone name that.
It could be a code name. I don't know. I need to do like a 23andMe. I've heard I'm maybe related to Pancho Villa, and so maybe somewhere down the line
wow.
that has like matriculated into code names.
Well, that is a fantastic code name and
100%.
name.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
That's an
great.
amazing name.
That's great.
Jackson, I don't know if we've heard your fandom story, right?
I mean, that was way on the first episode I was ever on, and now there have been dozens and dozens since then, but
See, you're not spotty like Cody. You've been
Well-
a wrestling fan forever.
I had a lapse period from 01 to about 07. So
Okay. Yeah.
right when WCW got bought, I hung on through the invasion and then dropped off after that. And then picked it back up after I graduated high school.
Very good. All right. Well, yeah. So for those of you that have never heard, and my wrestling fandom encompasses, like I said, few years at a time. So when I'm a young kid, right around the time in the 80s when they had the Saturday morning WWF cartoon, I really was into wrestling then. Junkyard Dog, Ricky Dragon Steamboat, and of course Hulk and Andre the Giant, Captain Lou, all those guys.
No love for the Macho Man?
The Macho Man, the Mega Powers, man.
There you
Of
go.
course. The Macho Man, Randy Savage. He's probably one of my favorites of all time is Macho Man. I love Randy Macho Man Savage.
Because of the Slim Jim commercials.
Oh, just the whole body of work. Like, listen, if we're going to talk Macho Man and
Rap album.
yeah, and you don't bring up the cream of the crop, then I don't know if we can be friends. Because that's one of the most amazing clips of all time, in my opinion. It's just so good. It's just so out there and weird and yet also awesome. So yeah, it's way back then. And then there's this weird time, and I'm watching this movie today, Iron Claw, about the Von Erichs, and ESPN picks up like this. What was the name, Kiefer? What's the name of the wrestling organization? The NWA.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
so
like the broader one, and they're like what world-class championship wrestling.
yeah, and so I must have been around this time because I can remember buying magazines with the Von Erichs in it, and I got really into Kerry Von Erich. I was a big Kerry Von Erich fan. It was like a flash in the pan for me. It couldn't have been more than a year, but I was super into Kerry Von Erich. And what I didn't know was, I'm not sure whether this was before or after he loses a foot. Mm-hmm. I had no idea that happened.
Well, it's like the weird thing too is I always ask Jackson about this because he knows more about the previous like pay-per-views and stuff. But one of my favorite pay-per-views is Survivor Series. I don't know which one it was, but it's Survivor Series where you have, face and heel team squaring off. Whichever team wins, their survivors go on to like a mega Survivor Series match
Soul
at the end.
Survivor.
Soul what? Well, yeah. If one person wins, they go on to join like the super heel team or the super face team, but like Ultimate Warrior teamed with the Texas Tornado, which was Kerry Von Erich at the time.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy to think that I didn't know him as Kerry Von Erich. I knew him as the Texas Tornado, and it's like, why wouldn't Vince McMahon want to capitalize on that like royal wrestling name?
Yeah, that's interesting. So that's the period I'm not a fan. I knew him as Kerry Von Erich, as one of the Von Erichs, and so that's my experience. And then I'm into WCW in the late '90s. Until they go defunct, and then I'm out. I'm pretty much after that, I'm out. I'm aware of what's going on. Like, I'm aware of Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock and all that, of course. I'm just not, I'm a casual observer at that point. And that's kind of where I've been ever since. So we've got our wrestling history out of the way. Let's talk about Iron Claw. So the Iron Claw is a movie about the Von Erichs. It's fair to say it's about the Von Erichs, although Kevin Von Erich seems to be the main focus of the movie, played by Zac Efron. And so just tell me, like, let's go around the table and just, what were your overall thoughts on the movie?
Oh, starting with me.
Yeah, go ahead, Jackson.
I felt it was a pretty solid movie. I had seen the Dark Side of the Ring, which if you make those a companion piece, it'll kind of help educate you on the movie a little more if there's some blind spots there. But I thought it was a real solid movie. I'm always a little hesitant with wrestling of, are they going to make it overly silly and, just talk about kind of like how trashy it is, or are they going to do it right? And, kind of respect it as an art form and a performance. So I was pleased with it. I think they took everything serious, and, they gave the wrestling as much attention as it needed, but they focused more on the bigger picture as well.
Mm-hmm.
I knew from the jump it was going to be really good, and that's because it has A24 producing it. I'm a huge movie buff, almost to a fault, because Jack will always say that there's only like one movie I've ever watched that I didn't like, but when I love a movie, I really, really love it. So it's kind of like saying this movie is like a 100% I love it versus a movie I might like is like a 25% or something. So A24 never misses for me, and I think kind of broadly the general public. I knew it was going to be good because of that. And that they had announced Jeremy Allen White as playing one of the brothers. And this was around the time that The Bear was getting really big. The Bear on Hulu, great show. And so I knew that was going to be solid. And then I knew that Zac Efron could be talented enough to kind of play that lead. The only thing I was a little bit skeptical about is if you were to Google images of Carrie and Kevin and then Google images of Zac and Jeremy Allen White, you could almost flip those two. And I'm wondering if that would have made the movie better because Zac Efron was great. He's amazing. And Jeremy Allen White filled the Carrie role very effectively, but I also think he could have been the lead. But yeah, in general, it was pretty incredible. Definitely a tearjerker. Jack's right on the money with Dark Side of the Ring would be a great thing to watch after, I think, for context. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I wondered about that too because my memory of Kerry Von Erich was he was a brick house.
Yeah.
Like he was the one that was super stacked, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was kind of strange to me. Although we'll get to that. Super buff Zac Efron just kind of weirds me out anyways. But Cody, what'd you think?
Like Keith, when I saw A24 was a part of it, I'm like, ooh, this is going to be artsy and fancy.
You weren't wrong.
Elitist. But I went in and I'm like, okay, Zac Efron, you have to make up for High School Musical 2 and 3 and 1. And he did. And so, like, I thought they did a good job. Zac Efron actually captures, like, Kevin's persona and cadence real well, I think. Just that more kind of slow, laid back, not quite as amped up as Carrie. And then the family dynamics throughout the whole movie, just amazing. And then some of the, I guess there's a scene particularly at the end that I'm like, ooh, that was done real well. And it could have been real cheesy. So they took some chances.
I hope you're not talking about the same scene I think you are, because I might disagree on that.
Well, you'd be a fascist at that point.
All right. We'll get there when we get there.
People's elbow.
The Iron Claw, a sports/thriller. It says on the Google search here. I'm not really sure.
Thriller's a bit of a liberty, but go ahead.
89% on Rotten Tomatoes, so critics like it. Here's the summary: the true story of the inseparable Von Erich brothers, who make history in the intensely competitive world of professional wrestling in the early 1980s. Through tragedy and triumph under the shadow of their domineering father and coach, the brothers seek larger-than-life immortality on the biggest stage in sports. So it's tense, it's heavy at times, as biopics can be. Biopics should capture the brokenness of human beings, and boy, does this one ever do that.
Maybe it would have been more of a thriller if they hadn't cut out Lance.
Lance is there for all of 0.25 seconds.
Now who's Lance? You're gonna have to fill me in on this.
Well, this is an audio medium, so they can't see me doing air quotes, but he was the other Von Erich brother. When they needed a new Von Erich brother, they just snatched a guy and made him Lance Von Erich. And the fans turned on it pretty quick, and then they had to come out and announce that Lance was a charlatan and all sorts of stuff. Not one of the brighter moments.
They did get a real wrestler to play Lance. They got Maxwell Jacob Friedman, MJF.
Former A&W champ.
Maybe the best heel / turned face in modern memory, MJF.
Going today.
Yeah, going today. Dude's a beast, especially on the mic.
All right. Well, it's time for What's Good. We're just going to go around a circle, and you can name off one thing from your list of what's good about this movie. Kiefer, you are the newest guest, So I will allow you to go first. What's good?
I think the family dynamics, and so what's the winner thing isn't happening yet?
No,
Right.
no,
Okay,
no.
okay,
Yeah, we'll
okay,
get to
okay.
that. This
Cool,
is just
cool.
things you liked about
Yeah.
the movie.
I think that it threads the needle of a balance between wrestling, giving out like meaning to wrestling fans, and then the whole concept of storytelling reaching to a broader audience. I think that the kinds of things that are portrayed in the Iron Claw movie aren't always like storyline wise equal with some of the better storylines within like 21st century wrestling, but at the same time it's better than a lot of like the lower level storylines of like what is happening in the WWE and AEW these days. And so it provided the audiences that might be there just to see like what's Zac Efron doing, or I just saw Jeremy Allen White in The Bear, I want to see this drama film, or I just love A24 films. It provided them enough context to see like this is wrestling, this is how people put together a match. Like there's literally a scene of one of the newest Von Erichs that's debuting, talking to like Bruiser Brody and another character about what their match is going to look like, and paying respect to the idea that wrestling might be scripted, but like the bumps that they're taking are real, and it's all about like amping up the crowd and telling a story. I think that was done very well within the movie, and so that's kind of my favorite thing in terms of what was done well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I thought they did that very well of making sure hey, this is real. In fact, there's a conversation that one of them has, right, where someone says it's fake, and one of the guys it's like no, this is real.
Yep.
We're really taking hits in there. Yeah. Jackson, what's good about the Iron Claw?
Well, I probably keep this one simple because we got winners and losers coming up. But I would say the aesthetic of it. I like how it's shot. I like the environments. How they capture the 80s and things like that. That's one of those things that can either be very well done or very cheesy and over the top. It stayed grounded. It had its fantastical moments, but again, kind of what I said earlier, it didn't mock wrestling. It took wrestling serious. And for somebody who is a wrestling fan and who deals with a lot of it's fake or it's stupid and things like that, I felt like this is something I could show them that kind of shows like, this is what I like about it. Yeah, maybe I'm not fully invested in all the circus act that comes with it, but it was a great thing for somebody who, maybe doesn't have that fandom to come into and kind of dip their toe into.
Yeah, I would agree with that too, that they did a good job. I never once felt, sometimes when they're doing a period movie where it takes place in a certain decade, long since past, you get things that could take you out of it when you see something, hear something, feel something that's like, that's not right. That doesn't feel like it came from that time. But they did a real good job in this movie. I never once felt like I was not in the 80s with them. Like it is a real good. The music, the houses, the sets, everything looks significantly old.
There's a great needle drop with Rush and
Yes. Yeah, did they use Rush to enter the ring? Was that a real thing, or was that just in the movie?
Carrie was the modern day warrior, and I think it came from the Rush song.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, when they're listening to that song, and then they transition into the scene where they all four walk into the ring together, that was really awesome. I agree with that. Cody, what was good about Iron Claw?
So I was going to say, like, getting to see like some of the wrestlers that were in some territories that they were in, because you do get like Chavo Guerrero Jr. as the Iron Sheik.
What?
Yeah.
Chavo's the Iron Sheik in
Noted
this, which-
Iranian Chavo Guerrero.
I missed that. How did I miss that?
But so for me, because I had watched The Dark Side of the Ring before, I'm going to go with Fritz Von Erich's relationship with Kevin.
Oof. Yeah.
Like, they captured that real well. And, like, kind of his demeanor overall, starting back when he was a wrestler, and then finally till he gets his promotion, and his sons are coming up. And it's all about, well, one of them has to win the belt. And, well, Kevin, you lost your turn.
Yeah.
Now let's go all in on Carrie.
Yeah, Holt McElhenney. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but I've seen him in other movies. And this is one of those things where, like, you don't give him the best acting award in the movie because he's basically playing a character that he just plays. He's a great character actor, this guy. But it's so good. Like, it's his wheelhouse, but also, yeah, it nails it. Nails the father that you're never going to win his affection. You're never going to win. He's never going to say he's proud of you. Like, you feel that through the entire movie, through the boys and all the actors that played the boys. I was real impressed with them.
Oh, yeah.
I am not a watcher of The Bear, although I've wanted to start watching it. It's just one of those things like, I just don't have enough time to start another show. But I was really impressed with Jeremy Allen White when I was dubious because I remembered Kerry Von Erich being bigger. So I was dubious, but I was very impressed with that dynamic that Cody brings up there. The father and the sons, man, it's something else. I'm going to piggyback on kind of what Kiefer said. And I'm just going to say kayfabe. The kayfabe and how it's presented in this movie. And we've talked about it before. Kayfabe is sort of the pretend world of pro wrestling that gets very real. Am I defining that? Is there any better way to define that, Kiefer?
Yeah, it's just the fiction of it.
Yeah,
It's
but
the illusion they all operate under.
But so many of them seem to fall in to that pretend fiction, and it becomes their life, becomes their world. And of course, the most famous of those is Ric Flair, who, like, you see, takes real punishment in the ring by Kevin, Zac Efron's character, when he kind of loses it. Like, he loses control and hurts him.
Yeah.
Like, he's bleeding and walks into the locker room like nothing. Like it is no big deal. Like, it didn't happen. And so I thought that was all presented really well. And that also piggybacks kind of onto what Jackson said, which is, dude, they present this in a way where, hey, yeah, they're putting on a show. It's sort of scripted, but at the same time, it gets very real in a lot of sometimes brutal ways. And the movie doesn't shy away from that. And
Well, Zac Efron does a real good job explaining it at the diner. He's saying, this is my profession and I get promoted based on my performance. It doesn't matter that we're not actually going in there and knocking each other around. It's like, if I'm good, I get promoted, and that belt is the sign that I'm the best at this.
Now, the implication in the movie is that he gets passed over because he's not good on the mic. Is that a pretty accurate thing, or is that played up in the movie?
I don't remember him ever being overly charismatic, but that is also I wasn't born period. And when I first started to get into wrestling, it was, kind of what WWE would want me to think of. They're the only ones that exist. And if it didn't happen there, it didn't happen anywhere. So that's been something I've gotten into as I've gotten older, but I felt that was pretty appropriate, especially in the scene where I believe it's David comes in and, finishes off the promo, and then David takes over from there.
Yeah. Kiefer, what else is good? What else is good about this movie for
What
you?
I really liked was they also really showcased where there's a benefit to wrestlers like putting together their own promos. It's kind of played out for a comedic effect, but during one of those first little interviews, when Kevin is trying to find what he's supposed to say, and he's like, "Hey, can we restart that? Can we do it again?" That to me, as a professor and a debate coach, I'm interpreting that scene as him really trying to find his own footing and figure out what exactly he wants to say with his own voice. And yeah, there's some ribbing from his brother, all in good fun and everything like that. But that is a stark contrast to some of the worst scenarios within certain pro wrestling organizations where wrestlers are just like given a script and people are like, memorize this. We're not going to let you improv. We're not going to let you restart and try to find the best way to phrase things. We're just going to tell you to say suffering succotash. And then try to get that over as a phrase, get that popular as a phrase. And so I thought it was really cool that they really did show, like, regardless of the familial drama, regardless of like the mythos behind the Von Erich curse, they did show that this is a talented family of wrestlers, and lots of bad things happen. Lots of things could have been done better from a parental standpoint. The politics of the territories are very clearly shown on display within the background, but they really do pay tribute to how effective the Von Erichs were as wrestlers and as talkers and people such as that.
Mm-hmm. Jackson, what else is good?
I feel like we've covered a fair amount of it, but there's really, I won't say there's no bad performances, but everybody does the job, to use a wrestling term, and it's 2 hours, but it doesn't feel like it. I know that when I went in, I'm like, oh gosh, 2 hours in this day and age, but it's a brisk 2 hours, get you in, get you out.
I came right from the theater to record here today, and I watched it in the middle of the afternoon, which is not usually a high energy time for me. Mm-hmm. And I had no problem with it. I never felt tired, and that's a good sign. Cody, what else do you have on the what's good about this movie list?
I mean, I just loved any scene with all the brothers.
Yeah.
That the brothers interacting, you can tell that they're very genuine about their affection towards each other, and that Kevin, like his whole dream of, well, I just want to own a ranch that all my family lives on. The brothers all live there. Everyone lives there. We're all happy. Yeah. And I just love any scene that there's at least two or more of the brothers, because you get that like genuine caring and just good storytelling throughout the scenes with the brothers.
Yeah, I had brotherly love on my list of what's good too. I'm glad someone else noticed that, because I love the idea, and they did such a great job of portraying this in the movie of, hey, dad can't show affection. Dad, you're not going to get love from dad. Mom's detached, like clearly some emotional issues from her, and the brothers pull together and are become their center, become their family for each one of them. And I thought that was beautifully shown in the movie. So I was there too. I have a couple other things I'll rip through here. Phone book tearing is training. Always awesome.
That's how I've gotten so buff. That and DDP yoga.
I couldn't believe I was seeing it when they showed it, and I laughed, and then immediately was like, yep. We used to think that was something back in the day. Zac Efron, I already mentioned he's scary ripped. He's also a pretty good actor, as it turns out. He's great in the lead role, and he's super believable, obviously. I would think that, especially Jeremy Allen White, who's kind of a darling right now, you'd be wondering, like, well, is Zac Efron going to hold his own? Maura Tierney is an accomplished actress, obviously.
Oh yeah,
and he more than does. He never doesn't fail to place. Oh, even his wife, Lily James, who's in a lot of things, and he holds his own in every scene. He's great.
I will say, you can notice that he was the one that had the dancing ability amongst all of the family.
The high school musical experience paid off, because when they start dancing, you're like, oh, look at his feet.
Very natural.
Just talented. What a talented guy. I also have on my list that Maura Tierney is fabulous. She's amazing, especially near the end of the movie, where she's finally, the emotional dam is starting to crack with her, where she's finally showing some effects of just what you can only, Kiefer mentioned the Von Erich curse. I've heard a lot of people say their families are cursed. I think this is the one of the few stories I've actually seen where I'm like, wow, I don't know how you argue against it, because it's just a parade of just awfulness that happens to their family. And she, as the mom who starts off very detached, and by the end of the movie is just, it's almost like an emotional awakening that she has. The last scene, especially with her and her husband, the dad, where she's clearly become a different person and the dad's not so sure about it, is wonderful. And she's just an amazing actress. Anything else in good?
That was good.
Okay. Kiefer, what's whack? about Iron Claw?
Oh gosh, I just had this off the top of my head that I was going to say. Yeah, I think that, and Jackson really hit it on the head earlier again, that Dark Side of the Ring is a great companion piece to this, because you get so much more context on I also can't emphasize enough about how much the Von Erich curse does seem to be real. And that could have implications about like parenting styles. We also probably all know that like the 50s through late 90s of wrestling was particularly bad in terms of like hypermasculinity, drug use, the attitudes within locker rooms and things like that, backstage politics, stuff like that. So I would say a whack thing maybe is that there are details of the specific tragedies kind of for each Von Erich brother that are just kind of skipped over. And there's some... I think maybe the director was afraid of the whole show don't tell thing, and maybe the director was afraid of making it too clear about some of the things that each brother was suffering. But I also kind of think that like each tragedy that each brother goes through was way more tragic in real life, and like it hits hard within the movie, and it's a very sad movie. It's an incredible movie, but it feels so much sadder as someone who like knows more about the story than what was specifically portrayed. And I think they could have went a little bit further, but also at some point that becomes maybe like milking it too much. Like I kind of get where they're going, but I also wouldn't have been feeling bad if they really told the story more about the bad stuff that happened.
I think you need to give the audience a break, though.
Yeah, I actually agree with both of those takes. But man, especially in the character of Carrie, I feel like you don't quite get that fleshed out enough, because he almost seems petulant when he takes it over Kevin, and he gets kind of, I could see a neutral member of the audience who has no experience with wrestling, like him becoming like the bad guy in that scenario, where they just don't flesh out enough what the lack of affection and from dad is doing to those boys.
I do think from like a cinematographical standpoint that like there's this like Poughkeepsie tapes like reveal for Carrie and his tragedy. I guess I don't know how strong y'all all are about spoilers on here, but there's like a really well shot reveal of what happens to Carrie, and then they have a callback shot to that near the end of the movie that I think that the context that I was previously talking about probably doesn't need to be in there to make that shot really more effective. And so I also think from like it is whack that the real life facts are stranger than fiction, but it also makes sense what the director was going for.
Yeah. Jackson, what's whack?
All right. I'm glad I got the easy one here. Ric Flair.
Okay, yeah. Stop. Everyone stop
That's
on a dime.
low ball.
Let everyone
Low-hanging
stop on a
fruit
dime
there.
because we need to talk about this.
Woo!
Jackson, I'll let you give your thoughts first, but I have some thoughts on this.
Well, and I'll kind of keep it quick so it can open it up to everybody, but I noted the comparison after watching it that it's similar to American Sniper. It's a wonderful movie, enjoyable time, and then there's a fake baby in it for no reason. And that's kind of what I was doing with this movie. I'm having a good time. I'm enjoying myself. You know, as a wrestling fan, I've got a little bit of familiarity with these people. And then Ric Flair comes on, and I'm like, why? You know, it's almost as though somebody who had never watched wrestling, had never seen a Ric Flair promo or anything like that is like, yeah, he'll work. And it was almost like it was Billy Zane playing Ric Flair to me, or maybe the guy from The Mummy. Like it was somebody that had no business playing Ric Flair and had none of the mannerisms, you know, just...
You want to know what's really interesting? Is if you go on IMDb right now, and I've looked in two places, it's not credited. And I'm just going to say, I don't blame the actor. If I'm the actor who plays this
Dean
part.
Eisenberg?
Now, where are you reading that?
That's on Google. And also, I've seen him release a statement about the way he
X
played.
went after him, or Twitter,
Okay,
depending on how
okay,
you
what
look
did
at
he
it.
say? Oh, there he is. He is on IMDb. Okay. Aaron Dean Eisenberg. What did he say?
He said that he stood by his choice on how
gosh.
to play it.
Aaron, you did not double down on that performance. Anybody who even is a casual wrestling watcher and knows who Ric Flair is could have done a better
But I'm
impersonation.
putting that on the director more than the actor, because obviously the actor does what the actor does, but the director signed off on it. Because I don't want to attack the guy.
That's fair.
I don't want to attack the actor because he might blow me away in his next film.
But that's why I would say, like, if I'm that actor, I'm saying take me off the cast list.
Well, like, there's this sense that when Ric Flair within the movie is walking down to the ring, he has this, like, he, like, looks down at his boots and enters the ring. And in my eyes, I'm interpreting that, like, okay, I am, I don't know Ric Flair's non-kayfabe name. Richard
Fleer.
Yeah, I'm Richard Fleer. I'm about to become Ric Flair. Let's get it. I'm getting into kayfabe mode now. But the thing is, the actual Ric Flair has no difference from Richard Fleer. Like, Ric Flair is Richard Fleer is Ric Flair, has always been for the past 60 years.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a cool little nuanced take from the actor if he is like portraying a wrestler that really has to like get into character to turn it on. But like Ric Flair, there is no difference between his kayfabe personality and his real life personality. And that's where it's weird that he's like defending a stylistic choice.
And they show that when the locker room scene.
Yeah.
Because he comes in and there's no break. You'd still think he was real wrestler guy.
Yep.
He's bleeding from the head, cracks open a beer and says, where can we go get, drunk?
Yep.
It's basically what he says. And it's like, it's no big deal. And I don't know. The mannerisms are off. The cadence, the voice, even the woo. You can't get the woo right, my man.
Yeah.
I can't woo, so I don't try, but that's a bad woo.
It was awful
And
all the way around. And it almost takes you out of the movie.
Well, it gets to critical mass so much that you have like it'd be like bringing in someone to play Hulk Hogan and they have a high voice and they don't say brother correctly because like everyone knows who Ric Flair is at this point. And, he's maybe scraping for attention with his relationship with AEW and he's maybe not as rich or successful or as like culturally relevant as he used to be, but everyone does know who that is. My comparison was I watched the Harley Race promo in the movie, and I'm like, okay, I don't know if I'm buying that Harley Race is that threatening of a heel at this point. I don't know if I'm picking up what he's putting down. I don't know if this is accurate to Harley Race or inaccurate to Harley Race because I just didn't really follow him as a wrestler because that was prior to my time of being born. But then Ric Flair shows up, and we even knew going in, like we had all. Us three had seen the family Jules had seen the clip, and we made fun of it. And we're like, why didn't they get Jay Lethal? Why didn't they get someone that could? Why didn't they get Will Ferrell? Why didn't they get someone that could actually like cosplay Ric Flair and deliver a promo? And it is wild because it really does almost take you out of it.
A Will Ferrell would have been fantastic.
My wife did bring up a point though of the movie wasn't about Ric Flair. So if Ric Flair had been Ric Flair, does that take away from the Von Erichs? And she has a fair point. She has a point, but I'm not letting him off the hook just the same.
It is an artistic choice, and it is the most choiciest of choices I've ever seen choiced.
Like, my wife wouldn't know if that was a good Ric Flair or a bad Ric Flair.
Yeah.
But I think you could have had Jay Lethal voiced over that guy. Because Jay Lethal does not look like Ric Flair.
Give the listeners some context if they don't know who Jay Lethal is.
He is a wrestler who's now in AEW but was on TNA. Happens to be a black gentleman, but he had a woo-off with Ric Flair. And it was epic.
YouTube kids.
Yes, YouTube.
Cody, what would you like to add to the What's Whack list? About Iron Claw.
So I had something originally, but then like I saw a take on or a review on the movie and I agreed with the review, but I'll say like there's more that happens after like the last brother passes away that isn't covered, but then like it takes away from the overall message of the story if you keep going into these dark corners.
Yeah. Okay, I don't know the story at all, so tell me and I'll see if I agree.
Okay, so
what happens that they don't put in the movie?
So there is a moment where Kevin Fritz holds a gun to Kevin.
Wow.
But he also has cancer and is really, really old. There's also a point when Kevin gets really low in his life, goes into a gun shop, steals a shotgun. The gun shop owner's like, "We love you, Kevin." He walks out and he was going to harm himself, but then he's like, it really sunk in that.
I think he said he wanted to go to jail, but
yes, wanted to go to jail. But so he's like, there's someone that cares for me in this moment, and that's what I needed. And he went back in, gave the gun to the guy, and they hugged and cried. But like, it takes away from that brotherly love message, because I think it is more about the brothers, with Kevin kind of being the lens to view the brothers through.
Yeah.
It's a
And
snapshot. It's not a complete.
It wouldn't just, if you add that, it becomes a Kevin film, and the brothers just kind of get some highlights here and there.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, I agree. I'd
There's
agree with
one
that.
other thing, but I'm going to let you do yours so I can see if you repeat it.
What's whack? We already talked about Ric Flair. Of course, that was on my list. I'm going to go ahead and bring this up now because I'm sure it's going to come up. And I get the feeling already that you thought it was okay. The end scene with the brothers who are dead is weird to me. It's super weird to me. It was all I could think of. It was like Happy Gilmore's Happy Place. Like, that's what it seemed like to me. And I felt like it was out of place. I felt like it took away from the gravitas of just the journey that family went on and the brokenness. And frankly, I'm not a big fan of it because of the nature of how two of the brothers die. The self-deletion portion. I feel like in our culture, we already have enough of a groundswell sometime of maybe almost borderline glorifying that. And I just didn't like that. I didn't like it was almost like the writers of the movie thought, man, this story's really sad. We should give him something so it doesn't seem so sad. But then that's not real anymore, right? You don't sit with the pain of that family, and you take away from how Kevin really gets out of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can tell by some of your looks that you're not with me on that. But I'm open to anything. I'm just saying that's how I felt.
So something that the movie touches on, I don't think it hits like too hard, is the faith dynamic. I mean,
There is a faith dynamic, yeah.
But there is a faith dynamic. But for Kevin, I think that is a major dynamic, and whether that scene is just wishful thinking or not, I think that might be Kevin's hope. That's what the brothers are doing, that they're all together, because that's all he really wants.
Yeah.
Even Jack Jr., who you didn't know existed until that moment.
I want to make sure that I get it across. It's not. It's just from the viewpoint of the viewer. Really, is kind of what I'm getting at here. Like, I get that Kevin himself may have had that thought cross his mind, and it may have given him comfort, and that's great. I get that that family had faith. That's not really explored too much in the movie, which of course it's not going to be fully explored. And that's great. But I just felt like it was almost like maybe like we talked about A24 as a studio, and they're great, and clearly they put out heavy movies. And it was almost like someone involved higher up in the movie said, nope, it's too sad. Put something in the end to make it not so heavy. That's what it felt like to me. And I don't know. And I just want to stop the episode, kind of just take a minute to say something. I know, like, it's real world stuff. And if you're feeling that way, I don't ever want people to listen to this podcast and think we're just talking into a microphone and we don't care. We do this podcast because we wanted to build community around it. And I'll tell you right now, if you're listening to this podcast and you feel those feelings, you're struggling, then follow us on Facebook and send me a direct message. I will always answer it. I promise you. I will talk to you. Send us an email. The email address is on the description for the podcast. We put them on every one, the link. Send us an email. I will talk to you. I promise you. I will never let that go. So if you're feeling that way,
988 is also a good resource. It's a national hotline. And so there are a lot of avenues out there, but we are also here to listen, talk to you if you're feeling a little down in the dumps.
Yeah, we're real pastors. So it's not just in the name. I just wanted to get that out there because I knew that when I talked about the scene, that naturally comes up. But yeah, that's just how I felt from the standpoint of it. Is just it felt weird to me. It just felt like it didn't fit in the movie.
I think it fit through the lens of the brothers for me.
Okay.
That's how I viewed it. I was like, this gives a little hope, a little lessens the load of the heaviness. And might be something that Kevin is envisioning. So
Yeah, that might be too, and I'm okay with that. The brothers are their happy place in the movie. Is made clear in the movie, so I'm good with that explanation.
Yeah, I thought bringing in Jack Jr. to it was really the effective part with that scene.
That really was. I agree with that.
I don't necessarily think it's something that the surviving Von Erich is envisioning, but I do think that it, in a storytelling sense, makes his conversation with his sons even more impactful at the end, because at some point in time, he becomes not a brother anymore, even though technically, he still is. His brothers are in the afterlife together, but there is a sense of that significance for him is he loses all of his brothers. Maybe he does think that they're together somewhere in the afterlife, but he then has kind of that rock bottom moment where something that I will talk about in the winners conversation is really brought up with his relationship with his sons in a really positive way.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that, Jackson, or can we move on?
Well, I enjoyed getting to listen to you and Cody's points first, because I was closer to you than further from in the beginning, and then Cody made a good point about that was Kevin's interpretation more than anything that was just done for dramatic effect. And then when it was like, oh, this is a happy moment, and I'm like, it is, but then the other brother comes on, and it's like, for somebody who maybe just quit crying long enough to return back, then they restart all over again. But I agree with, if it had been like the Carrie Von Erich story, I think it fits a little more. But with it being the Kevin, they don't really ever take it away from Kevin for very long. He's always the narrative center. So I thought it was a little overdone, and it was like, again, here, let's pick you up off the floor and get you again type of emotional manipulation. But I like both of your sides. I would say I'm still straddling the middle between your opinions.
It's a good point too, like we talked about earlier. If they flesh out Carrie's context a little more, maybe I feel a little differently about that scene, because it is about Carrie, at least at first, at least till Jack Jr. shows up.
Well, and that's what Carrie's trying to accomplish in that act, and that's why when I liked when you said the glorifying it, and I'm like, I never looked at it that way. Of Carrie's doing something so he can get back to his brothers that he loves so much, and to the right person, that can be like, well, yeah, you go from this world to the next, and it's a better place, and it's almost like it's enabling in a sense.
Yeah I had those concerns too. It's not the whole reason. It just overall it just fell off to me. But I also hear the reasoning that you might fit in the movie, and I'm not really at liberty to argue any of my points. I don't feel strongly about them. I just know in the theater my initial reaction was, it just doesn't sit quite right with me. But the scene, Jack Jr. I had a little tear. That was sad. And that was effective, at least I would say, as a film scene. So if only just for that part of the total reuniting of the brothers, even one that a lot of the brothers didn't know, that was worthy. Deeper themes, we've kind of hit a lot of deeper themes already, but I figured I'd open it up for you in case you wanted to. I have a couple, and we don't have to talk long about them. But were there deeper themes in the movie that we haven't hit that you'd like to mention?
I think in addition to the like we've kind of patted around this, but the idea of familial curses, all of it could have. And who knows how the story, plays out in real life. None of us are the Von Erichs, but also from a dramatization standpoint, it could have been Succession. Like you could have had a lot more infighting between each Von Erich, and so I thought it was a very wholesome pick to show that the brothers, broadly speaking, always have each other's backs. And then I also think that's paired with like the generational differences element to where Lily James's character is like a really, really good partner and a really, really good parent, which isn't to say that the mom is a not good parent. Like the whole the Von Erich mom saying that's between you and your brothers, that's between you and your dad. That could have been a defense mechanism in a lot of ways, but that also wasn't the most emotionally healthy way of handling things. And so Lily James' character coming in and being just like a very strong emotional rock, being supportive, understanding that wrestling is a career path, or music could be a career path for the other brother, and just being so completely supportive was really cool to show that played into how amazing the Von Erich Kevin's sons were at the end of the movie. And that, I think, plays into the fact that the Von Erichs now are pretty broadly healthy, and a couple of them are wrestling, and just by virtue of wrestling in the real world are breaking that curse. And so I think that was really well done thematically by the movie.
Yeah, it was really cool to see that Kevin makes it to a place where, yeah, he's leading a healthy life, and they've got family that leads a healthy life. Because what we're really talking about when we say a family curse, and we see this a lot as pastors, is it's generational curse is what we call it more in the faith, and it's just the idea that brokenness runs downhill. And so in a lot of ways you will, in a lot of cases, in most cases, you will inherit the brokenness of your parents, and they inherited the brokenness of their parents. And you see that over and over and over again. And it's a special thing and a rare thing when you see a story where someone breaks out of the generational curse. And so when you call it the Von Erich curse, it sounds supernatural. But when you call it a generational curse, and you understand, like, and I think the movie did a great job of that, because they could have made the dad look like a real big villain. And he's not. He's complex. He doesn't show love, but he never beats them. He doesn't mentally abuse them either, in a manner of speaking. He's not degrading them with his words, but he is with his what he withholds. He hurts them. And so, and then the mom too. The mom, like you said, is probably just a defense mechanism to deal with all the emotions that she has to deal with, but also is hurting by withholding. And so, and that's a very normal, I mean, I think a lot of human beings can identify with that. And so that was done really well in the movie. Anything else? I also had down here, it's a story about sons trying so hard to make dad proud. That is a common generational story, especially of that generation, the boomer generation, and then the Gen X. Man, that's something. All right, winner of the movie, Kiefer. You are the guest. You get to go first. Who's your winner of the movie?
My winner of the movie is the concept of deconstructing toxic masculinity.
Oh, wow. Okay. You're going official.
My tear ducts never stopped tear ducting. After the fantasy, Carrie is able to actually start running again, get out into his life, see his brothers, see Jack Jr. But the whole idea of, did I mess it up? Carrie, Kevin? Do I get those names right? Did I get those names wrong?
Well, what are you referring to?
Kevin's still alive.
Kevin's still alive. Then I didn't. Good. Cool. Okay. I did not mess it up. I am specifically talking about the how there was the Poughkeepsie tape reveal. Carrie lost a foot, and we immediately think we don't see how that happens. And then when he goes onto the other side, he walks out. You see his
jumps
foot
around.
Again. Yeah, he jumps around.
He's barefoot.
That was really cool. Yeah. That's when I started crying, and then it completely goes to the end where Kevin is with his sons, and Kevin starts crying, and he starts freaking out because he's crying in front of his sons. And he's like, "Hey, I'm sorry for crying." And his sons are like, "You can cry, we cry. We'll be your brothers." And that was just so wholesome that in terms of breaking the generational curse, it got to the point that those children were able to have parent healthily, and those children were able to, even just being young, even at a time where, like, I think we live in a good time for toxic masculinity to not be as permeated through society, especially with like younger generations. Like I think we all know it's cool for dudes to cry.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was necessarily the case, 20 to 30 years ago. Like in special cases, it obviously was, and that was a special case with Kevin and his sons. So I think that's a very good message to send, especially with the fact that like professional wrestling generally is seen as a very hyper masculine thing. I know that like some of the veterans would talk about how there's a generational divide in a lot of like prominent wrestling locker rooms, because back in the day veterans would be like shoot fighting each other and wrestling each other like actual wrestling, or like doing drugs or like getting drunk or like going to strip clubs after shows. But this like generation of wrestlers is just like playing video games and streaming video games on the internet and doing like super healthy things in comparison. And so that was a cool little parallel as well.
That's good stuff. That might be the smartest thing ever said on this podcast. But
Thank you, Dave.
I agree. It's that scene at the end is maybe the best scene of the whole movie, where he's crying with his sons and they're saying it's okay. We all cry. It's great
I
stuff.
feel like Dave's picking his kids here.
Yep.
Yep. Old Fritz just chose Kiefer as his favorite.
Well, the rankings have changed. Kiefer is on top now. Jackson, you're going to have to earn that spot back. Cody's never on top. He makes me mad. He always disagrees
Cody's
with me.
the omitted Von Erich.
Cody is Kevin. He just keeps getting downgraded. Jackson, who's your winner of the movie?
We touched on it earlier, but Holt, Fritz.
Yeah.
I don't want to try pronouncing his last name for respect out of him, but I felt like the character was really effective. It's like you said, it wasn't a cigar chomping, make you just absolutely detest him, but it was like, oh, I wouldn't want a dad like that. Or if you were somebody who was raised with a dad like that, it brought back, flashbacks. And, I know we joke about the ranking system, but it is a question you always ask of, who's your favorite kid, and, the hierarchy. And it seemed like it was less about like, with him, it was which child is more useful to me, which one makes me look better.
Yeah.
And that living vicariously through his kids of like, okay, you're going to bring a championship to the family. You're not going to bring this, this is not your accomplishment. This is our accomplishment. And, it was, you knew you didn't want a dad like that, but it wasn't one of those where it's just, again, it didn't take away from the movie.
Yeah.
The bad was bad, but it wasn't slap you in the face.
It was interesting when like you learned at the dinner table when Mike talks about his musical abilities, and that mom's like, oh, well, your dad used to be musical as well. And then like he's so dismissive of it because that's not where the priorities of the family are.
Yeah.
It's wrestling, getting that belt back.
The thread of that's
Or
never dropped
there.
in the entire movie, which they do a great job later on when Kevin has taken over the wrestling company from his now aged dad. And he's talking about selling the company and being in a position where he has to sell. And he's been going through the books, and he just kind of floats it out there. Like, by the way, I know you were underpaying me. And then what does the dad come back with? Do you know how much it costs to raise you? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he immediately turns that back onto him as if, no, I've done all the sacrificing and work, when that's obviously not the case. The boys sacrificed immensely with their lives in those cases. So that thread's not dropped. And yeah, again, I love that you bring that up, like reiterate the nuance of his acting and the writing to make him not a cigar chomping, psycho. And to where, like, hey, if we're being honest, that generation, that dad existed a lot out there. Yeah, it's rough. And, I mean, I know people who had that dad. So, and it's good. The depiction is wonderful. Cody, who's your winner of the movie?
So before I get to it, I did say that this movie was loosely based on a real life story. There are a couple scenes, like especially when they find dead brothers, like how that actually goes down. That was kind of changed because Kevin doesn't carry Carrie into the kitchen table because I believe it's Fritz that finds Carrie, and he's like, "This is the biggest smile I've ever seen Carrie have."
Wow.
Like he was finally out of pain.
Wow. Did Kevin really choke Dad?
See, I think that was added for drama too.
Yeah, I think that was dramatic effect. I know it was mentioned earlier that Fritz pulls the gun on Kevin, and it was kind of like, basically they're all going to go at this point because the brothers have gone before them. And I think Kevin finds Chris, who is the omitted Von Erich brother from the movie.
Yes.
Okay. All right. You got something to add there?
Well, Jackson, what's that quote that Kevin said when he had the gun pulled on him? I thought that was a really powerful quote.
Thank you for putting me on the spot.
Well, I think it was like, it takes more courage to live.
Something
like
along
that.
those lines of it's tougher to live than take basically the easy way out. I'm butchering it, but
okay. Now, you put that quote from one of the brothers and then balance it with that scene. That's what I'm talking about, though. Like, knowing that one of the brothers said something like that, and then that scene got included in the movie.
I think it's more the stopgap of the dad is always going to be in between that scene and that quotation, though. And I think that also is like metaphorically serves the idea that the brothers at the end of the day are always going to have their bags.
Yeah.
I think you needed the choking scene, though, because I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, they're just letting Dad off the hook for everything. These kids are destroying themselves because they've either not met their father's expectations or, in Mike's case, just been outrightly rejected by him. And so I thought it was a powerful scene of, you were supposed to keep an eye on him. You were supposed to keep watch on him. And considering that Kevin had called him prior to it, and, he had alerted him, and he was like, I made you aware that Carrie was in a bad place, and you still did nothing. And, you hear the audio of, that's something for you to deal with. And it's like, you're our father, all this has been done to please you. So even if it never happened, I felt it was necessary, and it was cathartic in a way.
Yeah. Okay. Cody, who's your winner?
So I'll go more traditional to our style and not be so overarching. So, I mean, there's Zac Efron, there's Jeremy Allen White, but honestly, the brother that really impressed me the most is the one that played the Yellow Rose of Texas himself, David Von Erich, Harris Dickinson.
Yeah. They were all so good.
He held his own, and like you were drawn in, especially to him and his character. And then when he's sick at the wedding, I'm like, don't let him go to Japan.
Is everyone yelling at the screen at that point? Like, no, if someone's vomiting blood, it's not good.
He was very likable.
Yes.
Yeah.
The rest
He was
of them
great.
you kind of experience, but David was likable. He was like, I want this guy to stick around. Then he's puking in the toilet. I know he's not long for the world.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, like, with that cast, and I mean, you can talk about Lily James and the dad and the mom. Like, there's some phenomenal acting, and for him to shine and be instantly drawn into him, like, yeah, Harris Dickinson, you won this movie, even though like anyone else could say like, oh, this person was really good or that person was really good.
Well, and you figure he's the first brother to go, so he could, have completely missed the mark, and by the end of it, you're not even remembering it. But that's the thing, and that's what makes Ric Flair so jarring is everybody else is just crushing it.
Yeah.
In their spot, and then you have this thing, and it's like, this shouldn't be in this movie. This should be in the parody, or this is something that somebody who wanted to mock this movie.
Yeah,
would do.
I'm almost begging the filmmakers by the end of the locker room scene afterwards, like, man, you should have just not shown the match and did it by exposition. You could have just exposited that he lost himself out there or something, and we just wouldn't have seen Ric Flair and all. And that might have been
well. They use actual footage from the matches. You could have just spliced in a little bit of that, and
yeah, it is wild. I'm going to go a little bit lighter hearted with my winner of the movie, and I'm going to say the winner of the movie is Tidy Whities. I haven't seen that many Tidy Whities since the 80s, man.
That was jarring for me too.
That's how it was back
Everybody
in the 80s,
wears
Jackson.
boxers, don't they? Like,
No, in the 80s we all wore Tidy Whities. That was like the best. That was like the best product placement for the 80s that they possibly could have had. Was everyone was just running around in their Tidy Whities. It was like risky business with Tom Cruise out there.
It was.
And it was at first I was jarred like Jackson, but then I remembered back into my young 80s days.
that's the time capsule moment for Dave. Not the music, not the...
And I don't know why, but we were just all walking around in our skivvies too. Like that was a thing. That was really a thing. Like, I don't know why, but boys were just walking around in their Tidy Whities. It was just a thing, and it's hard to explain. And
I was with Mom. Like,
Mom's like, "What are you doing?"
Put on some pants.
The loser of the movie, Kiefer. Is there a loser of the movie for you?
Yeah, I mean Carrie, and I think that a jarring moment for me, and like I feel like knowledgeable of like contemporary geopolitical issues, and I know things about history, but as Jack lies back and checks his watch, they're just tapping out. I was like aware of the boycotting of the Soviet hosted Olympics, but I never did. Like Carrie gave such great context to that.
Yeah.
Like the man was out. He was out from under the thumb of his father. You know, we don't get exposition within the movie to show his father being like, oh, you're going to have to, if you're choosing Olympics, I'm going to make you bust your butt to do good at the Olympics. Like, we don't know what got him going to the Olympics. And obviously now we live in a world of like Kurt Angles and Chad Gables, where there are really effective former Olympians, for the most part, turned really effective WWE superstars or AEW superstars. But that's even beside the point. Like, even in a world where the United States, amongst other nations, don't boycott those Olympics, and Kerry goes over and just shoots the lights out in his throwing event, like, his entire history got altered.
Yeah.
And not only did his history get altered, and there's a metaphorical representative of, I think, a lot of potential Olympians. Like, there are people that would have been aged out by the next time Olympics happen, and what they had been working for their entire youthful lives is just like gone, and that's super depressing.
Because of geopolitics.
Yeah, because of geopolitics.
Absolutely.
Which is crazy because, 20 years before, you had Jesse Owens over there just kicking the heck out of the other marathon runners in front of Nazi Germany, and also doing it for like segregationist America back home. But yeah, because of geopolitics, Kerry specifically, his life just gets completely altered. He comes back with a chip on his shoulder. He decides he wants to do the wrestling. I even think some of the most vulnerable, like, hands-off moments from Fritz come when he's like, are you sure that you want to do this? You had your chance at Olympics. You don't necessarily have to come back into wrestling, but maybe you should, whatever. Like, I think he showed the most restraint with Kerry coming back. Kerry has a chip on his shoulder. He maybe overcommits, overprepares, and that's just a really depressing thing. And so obviously he's not like a loser, but he lost the most in terms of the story.
Yeah.
Like, he had that out. And he had an out that people respected. I thought that it was kind of to Cody's testament when he's talking about the musical discussion at the table. Like, it's wholesome that we learned that Fritz used to play an instrument, and that Fritz isn't just like this wrestler. But in the same vein, the littlest Von Erich, who was undersized, who probably never wanted to do this, was like, hey, can I go and play this show? I want to become a musician. And the mom's like, no. And the boys have to sneak him out, and that's really wholesome and everything. But it's just tragic that, like, it's tragic for Kerry because he was already out and wasn't forced into wrestling. But it's also tragic because that music could have been that boy's Olympics. But because it wasn't this hyper-masculine competitive sport, the parents didn't support him. So
what's clear from the movie is, no matter the faults of the parents, they raised exceptional sons.
Yeah.
They were clearly exceptional.
Yep.
And here in Carrie, and like, I agree with making that story kind of the loser of the movie, because we just don't. Man, I wanted to feel that more, because that took me by surprise. I had no idea he was going to the Olympics as a discus thrower.
Yeah.
So he's completely. You're right. He's completely out from under the thumb of the father. And when we meet them at the beginning, when we first get into that story, you understand that the father's given up control.
Yep.
He's just that one's gone and doing his own thing, and you're like, wow, okay, he got out. And then when that, like, they do handle the gravitas of that in the movie, how they're all around the TV watching President Jimmy Carter say that they're not going to the Olympics, and what that means for him. And you can tell, like, the brothers, when Carrie says, okay, I'll wrestle, you can tell the other brothers are not happy for him. And it's, man, I just wanted more of that story.
Well, and just to throw some additional context really quickly here is that, like, something that the film doesn't tell you is that, like, Carrie gets into his accident. I think it's a motorcycle accident in real life, but, like, he has his foot repaired. Like, he doesn't lose his foot because of the accident. But what happens is he ends up trying to walk on a broken foot, trying to recover, like, walk before he's fully recovered. And that's what shatters the foot. And that's why he has to have it amputated. And it's just layers upon layers upon layers of bad things that are happening to him specifically. He feels pressured to walk quicker. He feels pressured without the foot to, like, start running and hurt himself like that. We see the scene where they're wrestling at night in the ring, and he's pushing himself too hard. And it's really rough for him, just all the way down.
Wow. Jackson, who's the loser of the movie?
All right. I'm going to do a caveat. Kevin is the winner in life. He is the loser in this movie.
Ooh.
Okay.
I'm intrigued.
Because at the start, it's his time to shine. The belt's coming to him. You know, he's got all this going ahead of him, and then the match goes wrong. It doesn't deliver, however you want to look at it. And then Carrie slots right in and takes the shine away. And David slots right in and takes the shine away. And then, you know, he never gets back to that spot. And, you know, he has a spot later in the movie where when he wrestles Ric Flair, and it's like, you know, this is going to be your time. And then he just gets to the point where he doesn't want it anymore. And, you know, then he ends up with the Federation and has to sell it. And Fritz is, you know, still not accepting him because he wants to sell it. And he loses all his brothers. And it's just, you know, by the end of the time and now, and, you know, not that Kevin will necessarily listen to this, but it's like, it's great. It's wonderful. You know, the dark side paints this really great that he's, you know, he's kicked out all that, and he's even allowed himself to come back into wrestling, allowed his kids to wrestle and everything like that. So he's the winner of life, but he's just always second fiddle, second place. And then, you know, he never has any real moment of accomplishment, or, you know, he has the wife and the kids, and, you know,
They all live on the ranch.
he gets everything in the end. He's the most stable one, but it's always that, you know, well, there was your shot. And
and perhaps that's why it's more of an ensemble movie about the brothers too. Because I will say, if it's a Kevin movie, then that scene at the end really doesn't make sense. Because Kevin's, boy, he has it tough. But yeah, I think it was a good explanation, Jack. Cody, who's the loser of the movie?
I mentioned the name earlier, but it will be MJF, Maxwell Jacob Friedman of AEW fame, because he gets his part slashed way down. Like, you get to see the back of him for like half a second. And so Lance Von Erich isn't even like in the story, which you probably would have got more of the brothers that were still alive at that point, which would have been Carrie and Mike and Kevin. And you would have had that story more fleshed out, that, they kept wrestling and they were still doing the family thing. But no, like, he gets completely cut out, although he is a winner in real life because he executive produced the film.
Oh, nice. All right. The loser of the movie for me, and I'm trying to look at this from a neutral standpoint of no wrestling background. I'm trying to imagine someone just seeing this movie, and it's going to lead into the last question. The loser for me is pro wrestling. Kiefer did a good job of laying this out, how wrestling had all sorts of problems, and I wasn't aware that they'd fixed a lot of them, like you were talking about. So maybe this question is going to go a different direction than I thought, but this is not a good look for pro wrestling, this whole movie. The toll, and if you're a fan of wrestling, you already know the toll that it takes. We've seen tons of former wrestlers die before what we would say their time is, that they just lead hard, tough lives, especially the ones that go they're on the circuit. It's just, they're going somewhere every night, every week, and there's no time off, not enough time off. They're crushing their bodies. They're pumping their bodies full of steroids and other terrible things. They get hooked on drugs for pain, and alcohol for pain and emotional pain from broken families and
estrangement from their own families.
Right.
Too.
And so like my whole point of this is like, hey, this movie's great. It's affecting to watch. But boy, does it put pro wrestling itself kind of in the crosshairs if you have a little bit of background of already knowing that how hard it is on the participants. And it leads to the final question for B. Is wrestling good? Is it good? Is it okay?
So I think it goes into
it can't be any worse than football.
No, well, I think that it is the whole thing of nothing in itself is purely good or evil. It just is. But you can get sports out of it. Look at acting. I mean, Will Smith's family life is ugly.
Yeah.
And that's just like an example off the top of my head. You can go through a ton of actors, actresses, anything where there's fame, where there's something that becomes your sole focus that exists outside of other people or your faith component, whatever it is. If you get too involved in that and becomes a worshipful act almost, that this is the only thing that I find meaning in, eventually it will let you down. And eventually you will see the brokenness of what life is without having all the natural community around you, the love and compassion of engaging relationships. It is good, or it is okay to offer up entertainment. And I think when there's a balance, that it becomes better. Something WWE did this year that I was shocked and amazed by was Triple H gave all the wrestlers Christmas off.
Oh, wow.
Like that Christmas week off. They weren't traveling. They weren't doing shows. And so that's something that wasn't a thing. Like they worked all the holidays. And so Triple H has put in like out into the internet and everywhere that I'm going to be about family and about trying to get these wrestlers rest and having a better work flow and schedule. And so like in itself, I don't think wrestling is evil or it's good. I think it just is. And there's times where like it can look really awesome, and there's times where it looks really dark and depressing. Hence the whole Dark Side of the Ring series. I mean, they've made 4 seasons at least of this show, and it's just bad thing after bad thing after bad thing. But they could make a good side of the ring, and it's like, oh, this is positive. This is not bad.
Yeah.
But yes, it is what it is.
It's a good answer.
Opinion.
It's a good answer.
Well,
Jackson?
I'll go off of Cody's point is that I think it's one of those situations where, yes, this was the 1980s, and I laughed a little to myself when Kiefer said 30 years, and I realized that's probably not the time frame he thinks it is now. But, we have people like Triple H that...
A.K.A. Paul Heyman, right?
Paul Levesque.
Paul Levesque.
Heyman, totally different person.
Who am I thinking of?
ECW.
Guy with
Okay,
the ponytail.
different guy.
But you have people who they lived that life and they saw it for all its good, bad, and otherwise. And, now he's somebody who's in a position of influence and he knows what things, I want my workers to be home with their families. I don't want them, running themselves down on the road. And then on the other side of the coin, you have somebody who's a fan, Tony Khan with AEW, and it's, it's kind of living out his childhood fantasy of, I've got all these wrestlers and I've got my own company. And
he's the dad.
Yeah, it's kind of more of a workable environment, and it goes in concert with mental health is much more well known and everything. You can acknowledge anxiety and mental health issues in the public and you're not crazy. And substance abuse is more widely known. All this stuff has gotten out. It's not such this protected kayfabe world anymore, where Hulk Hogan shows up every day, rain or shine, fight with his wife, kids, anything like that. We've allowed our heroes to be flawed and to have, nuance and shades of gray to them. So I will say that pro wrestling is maybe not for everyone, but it's not something that, because I used to be like, oh, I'm not a wrestling fan. Of course not. No, never watch it. And it was almost ashamed. It was something like I'd lock the door, close the windows so I could watch wrestling. And, I think it's done a lot and it's got a greater level of appreciation. And so when those old-timey wrestling things happen, I think that's why they're so turned on negatively. There's a current story going on with Chris Jericho right now. I don't want to have the episode run long trying to recount it, but a lot of fans in general, they've quickly turned on Chris, even though it's a thing that if he had done that in the 90s, even 2000s, it would have never been reported and nobody would have had a problem with it at all. So I think as a society, we have grown and we have, enlightened ourselves. So wrestling isn't this taboo, meat grinder that it used to be.
Very good.
Well, and kind of hearkening with Triple H, for every Triple H takes 30 seconds to cover Booker T at that one WrestleMania to keep Booker from winning the World Heavyweight Championship, there is like Bianca Belair and Naomi getting almost eliminated in the Royal Rumble, but deciding to help each other get two women of color, by the way, and Booker T is a man of color. And so for that instance to happen back in the past, where Triple H has had like dubious relationships with the sometimes there's like, I guess to give context for the listeners that maybe don't know a lot about wrestling, maybe a more broader context to know is that like the foreign heel stereotype used to be a thing back in the day. Some of wrestling's greatest good guys in the 80s and 90s were Americans that were getting USA chants, beating up some foreign heel just because jingoism and xenophobia and stuff going on like that. And that could be an entire new episode. But the thing that I wanted to reference was the fact that Triple H has obviously learned from a pretty not great storyline with a lot of gross racial implications with Booker T to then go on and be supportive of a Royal Rumble booking that finds two women of color, instead of trying to beat each other and eliminate each other on the hardest part of the ring apron, to helping each other get back in. To think of another really positive example in wrestling regarding that is if you YouTube Ron Simmons winning the World Heavyweight Championship. There's this amazing clip of Ron Simmons fighting Big Van Vader, and you can see like this young African American boy run from about 15 rows up in the risers, run down to the front and just like jump, elated, so excited that someone that looks like him finally was winning a World Heavyweight Championship. And so there is something fantastical with it. And there's also a lot of stuff that's just like not great with it. And I think the really important thing at the end of the day that's unique about wrestling is the fact that like your actors are both the people. They're both the actor and the character. And, you know, you have situations like that in Hollywood where, like, the guy that played Joffrey Baratheon had to quit acting because he was getting bullied. The kid that played young Anakin Skywalker, Jake Lloyd, literally never acted again because of how poorly his role was received. And so, like, Hollywood has its own issues with, like, stan culture, viewing an actor as their character. But with wrestling, it is almost that 1-for-1 ratio. We talked earlier about, like, Ric Flair. Like, people are tweeting in kayfabe now, which is crazy because that means if you're a heel, you're probably treating people pretty badly on the internet. And some people maybe deserve that, but a lot of people obviously don't. Mm-hmm. And then there are people that don't understand that it's kayfabe, or there are people that get on the internet and just like troll, I'm doing air quotes, or just say super awful things under the guise of anonymity and the barrier that is the internet. And so I think wrestling, my one final metaphor here is that one of the most prominent things that I think helped wrestling reach mainstream was a video by Max Landis called Wrestling Isn't Wrestling. That's another YouTube video that you could go up and look at. And it tells the story of Daniel Bryan. And it's like incredible. But Max Landis is also like a Nepo baby, abusive person who's kind of an awful person. And so while he was able to bring forth this idea of talking about how wrestling can be this super amazing thing, and we can have this discussion about how the Iron Claw tells this story that maybe implicates wrestling, there are also people that are adjacent to it or even have nothing to do with wrestling who are also just like not great people. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if we can ever answer whether wrestling's good or bad. Like Cody said, it just is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's more of a discussion of, well, what's the net? And I guess the net is the net of everything else. Like I specifically said football because there are people out there who say, well, I think the net of football is negative. And I couldn't make an argument against it. And so, yeah, I just thought it was an interesting question. And you guys did not disappoint. Kiefer Storrer, our first-time guest, 10 Months of Courage. If you like listening to Kiefer, you might like his writing. Go look for 10 Months of Courage on Amazon. Jackson, of course, as always, Sir Jackson, Geek of the Round Table. Cody, any last things you want to say?
I give this movie 9 iron claws out of 10.
Yeah, give the rating. I was going to give it an 8. That's pretty good for me, though. I tend to grade a little bit lower than Cody.
I'll give it the number of fingers that I have, which is 9 3/4 out of 10.
Okay. All right. He's missing a quarter.
Yep.
We'll go 9 iron claws out of 10.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Question is, what's next? Because the internet rumors are the Eddie Guerrero movie, and while we were talking, and I was thinking that question might get asked, do we get a Chris Benoit movie?
Oh gosh, no. No, I'm not even going to recount that story. It's too sad.
I know, but it's one of those things. Like
we did get it. Hey,
years pass,
we got the CTE.
We get it?
We got the CTE movie for football. I mean, that would be the next step would be CTE because I think that's what a lot of people think with Benoit will happen. But we'll start talking more. We got to end the episode. Y'all can Google Chris Benoit if you don't know,
and watch Dark Side of the Ring on Hulu.
Yep. All right. Make sure and subscribe to the podcast, Pop Culture Pastor. Like us on, the social medias. Follow us, share our posts, do all that stuff. We'll see you next time.